Fam, don't start. Back and you're already complaining about getting too close to me. And right now, when I'm all the way up here and you're all the way back, look how small you look and how big I look. Can you guys hear me? I'm moving back over here. Welcome to the Combo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella. I feel this camera is like at a weird angle. Isn't it like you're this way?
You're telling me we should go more this way?
No,
More
the
this
other
way.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, that's why. See?
Yeah.
My bad.
Wow. Okay.
Is that better, guys? Can you see my eyes? Nah. How about that? All right. Fam, we are back together again. Whatever that means. Talking to the microphone. I have it on directional, so you have to kind of get like right up on it.
I'm here for a short time, and I told Pasta I would come down here to do a live show together, like for old time's sake, right?
All right. Look, we said audio and video are very clear. Fam, they can hear us. They can see us, fam. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a newspaper guy.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're putting in this Wall Street Journal is so full of shit. Here it is right on the beginning. China rebukes Biden for calling Xi a dictator. And when you go into the Xi.
It's she.
Like, it's a he.
It's she.
His pronouns are he, him.
He is a she.
Xi.
Xi Jinping.
Xi.
It's not Xi.
It's she.
It's she. Xi Jinping.
Okay, but when you read about she, it says, while she, who is unelected and wields vast power, they just talk about like how they're dictators and all this other shit. It's just in the rhetoric of how they speak of things. And they just said that Biden went after him right away. Also, Modi, I don't know if you heard about Modi, but the fraud squad, says they shouldn't talk to Modi because of human rights. And they want to, like, go after him, them and Bernie Sanders.
Interesting how supporting
Nazis in Ukraine,
fascists in Ukraine isn't a violation of human rights. Modi, not a fan, but just saying the hypocrisy is quite astounding here.
Well, fam, we have a lot to talk about, right? Obviously, this is the first time we'll be able to talk about Kennedy, Cornel, all that shit that's been going on. I
told you all to brace yourself for a fight because
there's going to be no fight. We just don't see eye to eye on that, and that's okay. And that should be okay for you out there as well. I don't begrudge you or hold it against you for having your feelings about Kennedy or having your feelings about Cornel and stuff. And hopefully you won't begrudge me for mine. So
I begrudge everybody who still believes that who knows about our election system and knows how corrupt it is and is still pushing not just like the election itself, but a candidate that's running as a Democrat. I don't understand how people who have endured the last 8 years of what we've seen with Bernie Sanders and the corruption of the Democratic Party can literally put their faith in a person running as a Democrat. I expect it from people who don't know better, like normies, but I don't expect it from people who were independent, who left the Democratic Party and are now like saying, well, they gave us this candidate, so let's go and support him. I don't get it. Like, how corrupt it is.
I do, but I don't think that we're looking at it as what is a successful campaign. We don't agree on what that actually is, and it's not for me. And I've said this before. I don't think that Kennedy's going to win. I don't think they'll let him win. I know we have a messed up system. To me, it's the elevation of the political discourse that would automatically not be there if he weren't here. And I do believe, after hearing Kennedy speak, he is one of those candidates who's a once-in-a-lifetime candidate that you get that's going to go over there and say stuff like, United States didn't win World War II. Russia won. We have to understand what's going on, and we should put ourselves in their shoes. His whole way of speaking is not just to one side. It's across the board. And I think it's very, very effective. Not to mention, I think that we're also burying the tangibles that come with RFK. And really, no, I think so. Because we're spending all this time. We very much concentrated. And I'm sure you give me credit. You have, you can do it on a live stream together for going and asking Kennedy that, right? For getting there. And it started a shitstorm. Everybody after started following it up. So whether I am biased towards Kennedy and think he's a great candidate or not, I'm not smoking crack and think he's going to win. I am just happy for the political discourse and the fact that, like I said, the tangibles are, we're not talking about the way he has taken on these entities,
What entities?
these captured agencies that are controlling the government, which is
agencies?
all the big pharma, big agriculture, all these, he's got hundreds of cases in which he's sued and actually done some great work for life.
Okay, yeah.
He's got a few shit ones too as well. I don't want to forget the big. I was with the LaRouche peeps, and they were telling me about a particular situation in which he had a bad case, and he stopped some oil production and tried to want to kind of push the whole, what do you call it, renewable resource energy, which is kind of now, who knows what it is. But he's got a bunch of other cases where he's taken on these agencies, and that is the spark plug and the actual plug to fascism, right? Where the corporations are controlling the state, merging together.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. We haven't even got to that yet, and I need to educate myself more on them. But talking to Don DeBar, he talked about 3 of them. We're very like, I can see this. Morgan Carey hit me up, talked about some of these. So I think sometimes we don't want to be focused on the forest and focused on the trees, not see the forest and see the things he is bringing to the table. So yeah,
that's very American exceptionalist of you to talk about issues of Zionism and Palestinians and Syrians and the Middle East, and the way he referred to Arabs as, focused on, what is it, the forest and not the trees, or the trees and not the forest, whatever the hell like you mean. I know what you mean, but it's just very much an American exceptionalist point of view that I think you can afford to have when you live in the United States. But if you lived in those places or had family members that did live in those places, I think your perspective would be different. And I see Israel as an extension of the United States empire, which is precisely why I cannot trust a candidate that is going to go in there and not just say, I support a 2-state solution. Like all candidates have said, look, not a single candidate is good on Israel-Palestine. Not one of them. Well, Cornel West is the good one on Israel and Palestine, running as a Green, but he has other weaknesses as well. I'm not supporting either of these candidates, but I will say that to me, you're either against imperialism in all its facets, when we're talking about the United States, number one supplier of weapons to Israel, the number one arbiter that has opened the doors for Israel to expand in the Middle East. That's the role of Israel, is to control the Middle East. And then you have, of course, the United States and the Americas, and you have NATO everywhere else. So to me, if you're going to stand against these agencies and you're going to stand against the establishment and you're going to be portrayed as this anti-establishment or anti-imperialist candidate, I have more of a problem not with Kennedy if he's honest about these things. I have more of a problem with people pushing him as being an anti-imperialist candidate, which he is not. As being But
he's the best on foreign policy.
I wouldn't say any of them are really great on foreign policy. I'd say he's better when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, the best when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, in understanding these concepts. He still uses the whole, yes, but I don't support Putin's illegal invasion of the Ukrainian people and blah, blah, blah. None of these candidates are saying that. Cornel West, of course, also called Putin a thug. I mean, these are the things that I have issues with overall, but I think Kennedy at least was honest in talking about how NATO and the United States' influence was behind a lot of that. So I agree with giving him commends there, but on the other end of the spectrum, people are making excuses saying that because the Zionist killed his family and all of this, he's not going to budge. I'm sorry, but we can't keep repeating this. We can't, if we're not going to put a candidate that's going to attack one of the most vicious parts of the United States system, then this is why we become complacent and we keep doing this over and over again. He's running as a Democrat. That's another huge issue that I have. The 2-party system, we know that the Democratic Party can decide who will be their candidate. Yeah. So why empower the Democratic Party? Why allow them to gather all this data on his voters that are going to have to register as Democrats to come in? And you know that at this point, with all of the surveillance state that we have, that getting that data from voters is really important to help rig future elections. Yeah. So that to me is also another issue.
No, I hear you. And I think it's great that you feel this way. I feel it's good that I feel that way, because then there's balance to the force. Very important. If you saw the last one, really sucked. J.J. Abrams, really bad. But, balance between the force is necessary. And you're right to call them out for these reasons. Israel, the Palestinian situation is a very tough one for a lot of people. And I understand that too as well. But like I said, there are other issues I think that he brings to the table that wouldn't be talked about. Other guys waiting to this guy over here,
Mhm.
who, wait, fam, I don't know if you saw this. Narendra Modi's in town. So usually, if you ever go to a hockey game, they'll play the United States anthem and then they'll play the Canadian anthem. Same thing happens when you have a visiting, a visiting foreign minister or leader of a country. Take a look at this at Joe Biden over here. I think he realizes halfway through that it's not the national anthem. Take a look. Cheese slice. Make it big. you can't, you can't make this. Oh shit! Let me slide it down. You can't make this shit
God
up.
save the queen.
God save the queen. That's why it's important, I think, to have Kennedy inside the Democratic Party, challenging this and pushing him back.
I mean, I'm not against him running. I have a problem with is people making him something he isn't. And I think a lot of people who have fair criticisms of him when it comes to his Zionist policies, the way he referred to Arabs, the way he referred to Palestinians, the way he defended Israel is really worrisome to me. I personally believe, and I said this in my analysis, my video, that if you guys haven't seen, there was a clip that was posted by Isha and a bunch of people where it was a very short clip where Kennedy was talking about the Chinese building ethnic bioweapons. Yeah. And he also said the United States does that. So I talked about the video, showed the longer clip where he said that. I do think that he still, at the end of the day, always talks about, Russia's invasion, China being this danger in terms of these ethnic bioweapons. I think he's talking to his base there. He's trying to get these people. I don't really care if he believes it or not. The point I'm making is this way of politics for me is just, I'm done with it. Where candidates pretend to believe and people are like, well, he's playing 5D chess. Like, well, we all did that like years ago with Bernie Sanders. I'm not doing that again. If what he is giving is what it is, and I'm at also what he's doing as well. So there's still a lot left to see with Kennedy because he's never governed. He's never been in a position of power. And so if you're making concessions to me, if you're making concessions from the beginning to really powerful agencies, and the same thing with the normalization of the CIA. I get it. I get what he's saying. Not everybody in the CIA goes into it with the intention of being evil, which is true. But at the same time, it's like, well, you don't have to, like with the whole Crystal and Sauger thing, just like placating to these certain people and these certain agencies and being overly polite and it's just not I don't think that's like the way to do it, because I do think Trump, for as many reasons as you hate him, got so much support because he would just say things like they were what he thought. There wasn't really a back motive with him. It was just like, we're going to take Syria's oil. We're going to take Venezuela's oil. It was that all along.
We said the oil. Let's take the oil. Cheese slice. Go to the second part. We're going to go to the second one really quick. The video that Fee was just talking to. Let's get to that. That's take it on down. The next one, we're going to go to the China video, China Biolabs on that Kennedy on Greta. Bring that one up instead. And Kennedy on Greta. And go to 3. I had it there. 312. Let's take a look. Fiorella was just referring to the comments about China and the bioweapons, because we should have a conversation about this.
Because we've got China developing some sort of spy satellite base in Cuba, discussion about that. They had a spy balloon go over the United States. They're saber rattling in Taiwan. They've got that hypersonic missile that can evade our defense system. We have nothing to protect ourselves from. So, we all want to de-escalate. How do you actually get people to de-escalate? How do you get President Xi Jinping to say, you're right, let's de-escalate? We'll stop doing this.
Well, we're building military bases and have a huge military presence in the South China Sea. of course, China is going to feel justified putting a military presence in our hemisphere. And, when in 1962, when Khrushchev put missiles in Cuba, he did that because we had put Jupiter missiles in Turkey. And as soon as my uncle met with Ambassador Dobrynin and said to him, we will remove our nuclear missiles from Turkey if you remove them from Cuba, Khrushchev did so. So I think, there's no guarantees that the Chinese will end their presence in our hemisphere, the military presence, if we agree to do something, de-escalate over there. I think there's a good chance they will, and we won't know until we at least sit down and negotiate with them about these issues, and that's what we need to do. We've refused to negotiate with Russia about anything, and when you do that, you cast your adversary as an enemy, as somebody who can't even be talked to. It is a formula for war. And, my uncle understood that. He said, you got to be able to put yourself in the shoes of your adversary and understand their cultural, their national security interests, their national security anxieties, their cultural and historical perspective. And until we start doing that and talking to people, our adversaries, we're not going to de-escalate. But I believe the world wants to de-escalate, and everybody in the world, nobody wants a war between Russia and the United States, and we don't need one, and we can fight them on an economic landscape, and we can prevail.
Do you
All
worry
right.
about this?
So, fam, what are your thoughts right there? Because I think the rhetoric there is a good way about going about it. You're like, listen, I've been trying to break through with a lot of the conservative people speaking to them. I speak to them on a regular basis. And they're just blinded by what's going on. The party of individual responsibility wants no responsibility when it comes to our foreign policy. They want to point out things like, hey, China has this, Russia has that. Yeah, but no shit, they have them. And we shouldn't deny that. But the reason why they have them is what Kennedy just pointed out there, is because it's a reaction to our actions. If we have nuclear weapons, then China and Russia has to have nuclear weapons. If we have submarines with missiles on them, then China and Russia has to combat that. If we have weapons of mass destruction and bioweapons, China and Russia have to do that. They had everything we do. And I think he's been very plain and simple in kind of pointing that out. And I think that's a way of getting into not just people on the left who already feel the way we do, but across the spectrum, those people who are center, right-leaning, some of those conservatives. This method, to me, has not been done by a lot of people. I think he's better than Bernie on certain issues when it comes to foreign policy. I think he's better than Tulsi on certain issues when it comes to foreign policy. And he'd have the legacy of a Kennedy, and people are admired and lost in that whole fucking Kennedy story. So I think this is effective right there. And I think that's fair the way he pointed it out. And I thought it was kind of a little bit not the best way in which when I kind of went after Nick for his comment in his tweet. I said, Nick, I think this is weak analysis. I think what he's doing right here is good. It's proper. I think it's one of the better interviews, because he also lays out, and we'll play the clip after, where we have 800 bases everywhere and China has 1.5. So don't you think this is an effective way of kind of talking to people across the spectrum, not just people who are in our camp?
I think he's pointing out some truths about what the United States' role and NATO's role in manufacturing consent for nuclear arms race. I think what he said is valid. I don't think it's invalid, but I still think that at the end of the day, he still pushes, well, we can go after these people in a different way. And he said that at the end, we can compete with them financially, which, I mean, but he still leaves the door open, in my opinion, when he talks about things where he goes after. He says the United States is guilty of this, but then, Russia shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. Or he says that the United States has bioweapons, but also China is building up ethnic bioweapons. So he tries to equate, for me, this isn't, this is better than what the other person is saying. And well, in regards to nuclear arms and any of that, it's better than what anybody else is saying at this point. But that doesn't mean that I trust it as a genuine concern, because I think we talked about this off camera yesterday, where you have the COVID sector of the population, you have the independents, you have all of these people that really paid attention to COVID. And then you have somebody running as a Democrat now, and you have all of these people rushing to support him in the two-party system. You have Kennedy with his name. You said his name and legacy. That is a two-way streak. The fact that it is a dynasty type of family, that has really it's almost like, well, we're going back to the same old thing, the same dynasty type of family. And then on that note, then we're talking about the way he has divided a sector of us who were supportive of, on the COVID situation with his Zionism. And it just seems to me like his candidacy is a way to divide this sector into people who are okay with America First type of policies, which is a large sector of the Republican contingent. Because when I think of America First, in my view, America First should be helping the domestic policy of the United States, helping people get their life together and all of that. But on the other end is everybody else outside doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I still think he is talking to that audience. And I do think it's effective in terms of building, trying to get as many votes as he can from a wide range of people. But I also think it's very much still rooted in American imperialism. That's my issue with him. And I don't like it when people make him out to be a savior of sorts, because I don't think that's what he is. I think he's always been establishment in terms of who he's politically.
Yeah.
He supported the Clintons for a long time.
Yeah.
Why do people
always
not
been a
have
team
the
player.
same
Yeah.
type of concern as they would with somebody else doing the same thing? And so I think people have created an image of him that just isn't really who he is. And I do think he should be applauded for what he does well,
Mhm.
which were parts of this interview, and also criticized for the parts where he's still sort of like creating this fearful, oh, the other side is still bad sort of thing. And some people feel like he has to do that in order to get any sort of attention, because he's already being labeled a quack. And look, I think that the criticisms on COVID against him are really bad. I think criticisms that Crystal and others have, yelled at him for, or Marianne, which I talked about in that video as well, where she was like, it's not a proxy war, baby, or I'm sick of hearing the word proxy war. I think, they make him look better. They make him look like a victim. They make him look like the best candidate because they're criticizing him as an anti-vaxxer, when that's like one of the good things he has done. That's one of the things he should be applauded on, that he got COVID right, and that he's gotten a lot of these issues right. But he's being criticized for the wrong things. And so it makes it really hard to navigate this whole situation.
It's almost like Trump again, getting criticized for Stormy Daniels and all this other
Right.
bullshit, rather than criticizing for like the money into connections with the Saudi families
Yeah.
and building all different types of businesses there, because he lent them a hand. And then as soon as he, became president, and, he was like, look at them, look at how much they're paying for these missiles. And he was giving them all that shit, and they weren't criticizing him because they were guilty of the same reasons. The emoluments clause, they really never dove deep into it. They just hit the surface. I think they could have gone deeper. They could have criticized him for his policies in Latin America, but they can't do that because they're guilty of the same thing. But we have gone to the Libre Party, the headquarters, when we got to meet Manuel Zelaya. Every single revolutionary was on the wall, from Hugo Chavez to Fidel Castro to Petro Gustavo when he was a guerrilla and he had the hair and all that. And at the very end, there was a John F. Kennedy picture on the wall. So I think there is some credence when he talks about these things, because he did try to make amends and kind of give people in Latin America their national sovereignty, and that was pulled away from him. Arthur Dulles, as soon as he lost his job as head of the CIA, got it back after Kennedy was killed. He went into Guatemala, which is having an election, by the way, Sunday, and we're not fucking there. I wish we were there.
The election has already been decided.
Yeah, because they
got
removed
rid
the
of
indigenous candidates off
they
the
got rid
ballots
of the
because
people candidates.
exactly, because they were going to go do what they did back in the revolution, nationalize the fruit. So, I mean, there is some credence to that. Let's go to the second part, which was actually the first part I put up, because I do think you have a point. When I know what you're hearing when you're saying that he's still saying the other side is bad, because he does use the term that China wants to be world dominant instead of saying wants to be the world leader in economics. So he has to choose his words wisely, because he does kind of play to that they are still out there. But a lot of people do see things that way. And I think sometimes people on the conservative side get really frustrated with us on the left, because we say, America's bad, America's awful, and we're like, well, who cast the first stone? Who threw the first punch? There's always the main aggressor, and then there's people reacting to those aggressors. So let's take a quick look at this, and I'd love to get your opinion on what he says here.
Okay, let's go to foreign policy. All right, let me start with China. If you're elected president, Is your China policy, what would be sort of your thought about China? Would it be a different foreign policy than the current Biden administration, or would it be something a little bit different? How do you see China?
Well, I think there are, first of all, I think that China is interested in world domination, but I don't think China wants to fight us, to confront America on a military battlefield, on a military landscape. I think it's projecting economic power around the country. We have 800 bases around the world. China has one and a half. We spend 3 times more than China on our military, and we spend more than the top 10 nations combined. China doesn't want a war with us, but it does want to compete with us, and it wants to dominate us on the economic landscape. I'm not scared of that kind of confrontation. I think America, with our freedom in this country, with our what Franklin Roosevelt called America's industrial genius, our entrepreneurial spirit, we can compete with China and anywhere in the world, as long as we stop spending all of our money, wasting our money on these military expenditures that are bankrupting our middle class, destroying our industrial base. Rather de-escalate the military conflicts, the saber rattling, reject economic power. As it turns out, people like it. We've spent $8.1 trillion since 2000 universities and hospitals. And as it turns out, it's a better way of making friends around the world. People want to deal with China because they like the no strings attached investments in their economies. We ought to be competing on that landscape and not on, and not just restricting our competition to the military. We ought to be de-escalating. And I think there's people in the White House now who want a war with Taiwan, and that's not a good thing for anybody. That will be World War III.
How do we?
Thoughts there?
So my issue with him is this too. Like, I don't think it's wrong for him to say that we should compete with China, because I think in terms of the world, we might view it as competition, but the rest of the world just views it as, okay, well, we just want to have our own national sovereignty. We want to be able to trade with who we want to trade with. We want to be able to succeed and be on the world map, to be leaders, to be, somebody that's looked upon. And that's the way the East views it. And I know this because this is literally all we focus on when it comes to our coverage at RT. We focus a lot on India, on Russia, on China, on relations in Asia, on relations in Africa. So it's a very Western-centric perspective to think that the rest of the world wants to take away what you have. It's almost projection, because that's exactly what the United States and the West has done. So when he frames it this way, I still see him as living in that mindset. And a lot of people might not mind that. But I mean, to me, it's just very obvious. And when he says things like our freedom here, we don't this reminds me of when he talked about Israel being a democracy in the United States, just like the United States, and like any dissident Arab in the world would rather be in Israel because you have more freedom and democracy there. You're still using the language of the State Department. You're using the same talking points that we have freedom in the United States. I'm not saying we are, living in a fascistic, entire fascist country, but we're getting super, super close. And it's that for a lot of people. It is a very lacking a system that's lacking democracy. It is an oligarchy, that what we're living in. We don't have fair elections. We definitely don't have the freedom he's talking about. I don't see how we have a democracy if our leadership is selected and not elected. So he's still painting this idyllic version of an America, a United States of America, that I think it's wrong to continue to paint that picture. I think it's dishonest, but I also think he knows who he's talking to, and he's talking to that America First type of group where they do believe that and they do see as protecting. And so as far as a politician, he's doing a great job in terms of selling it. But again, I don't want that. I wouldn't vote for that because I don't think it's genuine. Either he's not smart enough to know that we don't live in a democracy and he lives in an elitist bubble where he can afford to think that we do and that everything, we still have freedom, or he's just avoiding that topic because he's running a particular campaign and he's only going to tackle certain issues. Either way, I have a problem with it. And this is exactly what I mean. Like, this sort of rhetoric, it's just not what I and my ideals align with, even though there are some good things about what he has said and his candidacy. So I just don't like the fact that people are making excuses, saying things like, well, he has to run as a Democrat, or he has to do this, or if he doesn't do this and this, he could do whatever he wants. He's just choosing based on, it's like when journalists say, well, I'm not going to cover that because that makes me look bad, or it's a risk. I'm not going to go to Russia because then I'll be labeled a Russian asset. Well, those are choices you make, but then I know you're more focused on how people view your career rather than the things you need to cover. And so for me, that's just my perspective and how I view courage and integrity of people for doing that. And he has had courage and integrity when it came to COVID, but he's been doing this for a long time. Those have been his views for a long time. And so I don't know. I don't think he's still well versed enough on foreign policy to really be able to take it on. But I agree with you that the discussions that are being brought up aren't a bad thing. So I will say that.
I think he's talking to a lot of normies out there, unfortunately. And I just came back from New York, fam, and I kind of fucking lose hope sometimes hearing these people talk. Everybody out there, their mindset, they really don't have a grasp of what's going on, especially foreign policy wise. They have no idea. And they've been indoctrinated and programmed in these schools to think that China and Russia are so bad that they're always like this type of enemy. So I think this type of talk can kind of really grab. It is.
I mean, he's from that generation.
He is.
And I don't think it's idealistic. And it's funny that people are telling me this because I pointed it out to you yesterday. I remember when Hillary Clinton said, what do you want? You want pie in the sky. These people just want, you're repeating those things to me.
I hate that she said those things.
That people are saying, well, this is too idealistic. This isn't. No. Well,
don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah, that's what the establishment.
That's what I feel like saying, and I'm like, oh,
that's what the establishment has said. No, but it's kind of weird hearing independents and people who came from the Sanders campaign and hearing all these people repeat those words. It's almost like some of you have been brainwashed to.
I don't think they have the right to use them
in the democratic system. We don't have a democracy. Like why, as a Democrat, as an independent, he would, I understand all the whys, but it's just not good enough anymore. If you're going to continue accepting something that isn't going to work, you're going to keep repeating the same cycle. And I guarantee you will be repeating the same cycle 4 years from now and 4 years from now, because the American public isn't ready. The Mexican people were able to create a party, an outside third party, because they worked really hard for 20 years and didn't just say, we're just going to keep voting for the same two-party system over and over again. They literally decided that something had to change and they did it. But the American public is too complacent. You're still too comfortable. And until something changes, we aren't going to get a good candidate. But it is because you keep accepting candidates that are not worthy of a paradigm shift outside of this system that you have been living in. And unfortunately, from my experience of talking to people who live outside the United States are not thrilled with any of these candidates. Of them, but the people who live in the United States feel like they have to support somebody. So I understand, like, from that perspective, if that's what you want to do it. But I think it's just,
let's not also forget that the Kennedys are way big time anti-communist. Get the Chris Hedges video ready next in that section, cheese slice. We'll go to that one, and we'll get there. And listen, guys, Fee, we have to make a decision because somebody was saying that the way they're putting these the questions up, they're kind of like prioritizing them, leaving some out, that we should just give everybody a wrench and let that go. But that also means that you guys have to police the whole chat. And we got some people over here that just come in here and start saying some shit. I don't see them saying anything, talking about Lula, talking about me in elections and stuff. I don't think that Kennedy is going to win the election. I don't believe that our elections are fair whatsoever. I'm hoping that we can kind of get into him the way I got into Cornel West and say, hey, man, on the elections, where do you stand? And maybe we just take one thing this election, and whether they throw Trump back in or Biden back in, we can use Cornel West and we can use RFK as a vessel to try and push for those changes. Also, when it comes to Lula, that somebody wanted to say Fee's left Lula is loved by the CIA. I got to say this much. Peter Hotez is in Brazil now talking about fucking vaccines. I don't like Lula's stance on vaccines. And I said before in the election that I'm glad I don't have to vote for either one of these. I stand corrected. I would vote for Lula now. He has been masterful the way he has handled it. He is a slick politician. He knows the system. He knows how to work it. He knows how to tell the Americans what they want to hear and then go push for his own bank and push for bricks. He knows how to freaking work the whole system. He's been nothing but masterful, I think, Lula. And yeah, he gave the CIA reason to believe whatever they want to believe. Same thing with the Biden administration, because Bolsonaro had aligned himself with Trump and he used that to his advantage. And I think he's been doing a great job, despite the fact that I don't like where he stands on vaccines.
Well,
and that's okay. I can separate those issues. I'm not going to say that's it and get out of it. I hate him for that. But he's great on so many other issues. Go ahead, fam.
Well, I was just gonna say, despite the fact that he's still, he's still not there when it comes to Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba. He's still sort of like trying to placate, kind of work both angles, and he's criticized.
He's been
from
good
the
with Cuba.
left. He's been
Yeah.
decent. He's
Shit, and the
been-
blockade.
But when it comes to the religious bullshit that's going on in Nicaragua, he still sort of says, "Oh, well, we need to release the priest and blah blah blah." And there's really no religious persecution in Nicaragua, and so he was kind of like, alluding to, "Oh, well, I'll talk to Ortega and blah blah blah." But those are like minor criticism. I think like he has done a great job as a politician, as an aside, but I don't by any second believe he's like some sort of revolutionary. I mean, he is what Brazil needed, in my opinion, at this moment.
He's definitely what Brazil needed.
And honestly, on a larger spectrum, BRICS is going to really pull Brazil into this sort of multipolar world. And what I was going to mention too is that the Argentina and Brazil are leading de-dollarization. And I was discussing this with our friend earlier. It's really bad. It's going to get really bad because the only thing holding the dollar right now is basically like oil and the endless printing of money. And it's just not, it could easily go away with Saudi Arabia's relationship with China. And so can we really compete with China? I don't really think we can compete. We're not at the level they are right now. And China, again, has a population of people who have money, who like regular people that have accumulated wealth that go into the United States and are buying property that that we don't have. And I see that wealth more also in Russia in terms of people owning homes. People in the United States are, having a really hard time right now with all of that. And so this is why I don't think any president, even if they were the perfect candidate or my perfect candidate, would be able to fix this as a president, because we know who really is in charge. So again, for me, it's like having to change the system. And I don't think we know how to do that just yet.
Pam, I'm going to put up this comment right here too as well. It's weird that Hedges went so personal smear on RFK, and weird that Dr. West spends far more time attacking RFK than Biden. I've been saying the same thing. Let's take a look at this here. Give me your opinions. I think this was stupid. I don't think it was like the worst thing in the world, but I just don't think it was dumb. I think it was a little bit divisive. And at the end of the day, the only movement in the streets I think that will ever win is if when RFK gets the boot, he joins West. I know it's never going to happen, but only one can hope. Take a look at this video.
Cornel has a depth that so far beyond Kennedy. I also have such a problem. I mean, there was one point in his announcement where Kennedy talked about his father coming back and saying that, the rich people have the bankers and this, but the workers or something have the Kennedys. I mean, coming out of the working class, that was a pretty nausea-inducing comment. Like we need rich people like the Kennedys. I mean, the Kennedys, both Bobby and RFK, I mean, they would not have had a chance, but for the fact that they came from a fabulously wealthy family, their father, Joe Kennedy, who bankrolled the campaign. So not only is that how JFK, and then all the dirty relationships with Daley and Chicago and everything else. But people forget that Bobby didn't run until Eugene McCarthy, the anti-war candidate, got a lot of traction. And Bobby was spending, I don't know, it was his family money, $1 million a day, or I can't remember the figure, but he buried McCarthy, but it was very opportunistic. He also was as Attorney General, the person who put the wiretaps on Martin Luther King's, he hated King. He hated King. And if you read closely, neither of the Kennedys were particularly supportive of the civil rights movement, not in any real way.
That's going to seem that's so counterintuitive to the narrative that we're
well,
fed.
Of course, but that's how white people do it. They're good at it, George Washington Lincoln freed the slaves. No,
Yeah.
Lincoln wanted to ship enslaved people off to Madagascar. There's Frederick Douglass, who, was the abolitionist. William Lloyd Garrison, was those figures. So we write, as Zinn says, we write those, we recreate the narrative. I mean, it's like FDR. No, FDR did not give us the New Deal. It were workers who were doing radical sit-down strikes in the auto plants. It was the old Communist Party. I mean, so there's always and that's how you get tenured Princeton. You write big, thick books like some of my colleagues about Ronald Reagan or something. And Bobby speaks in that language. I mean, I have my big problem with him is over Palestine. I was 7 years in the Middle East. I just won't support anyone who parrots the Israel line. I just can't.
Okay. So you want to go first, or you want?
Yeah, well, I can just say the very last part I definitely agree on. I mean, that's where the criticism should come, but the rest of it was a little poo-poo, I thought. You know what I'm saying? Even though there was some truth in what he was saying, how you say these things is going to either determine whether you can bring more people into your tent or leave them out in the cold. And I just told you, like the other day, yeah, there is a lot of fact that we talk about, well, that's how white people do it. I wish I would have said some white people do it, because once again, the generalizations to me suck. All generalizations suck. And it's just going to be, it's not going to help you. It's going to push more people away. One of the reasons, I asked Cornel some of the questions I did is it was to directly say, how are you going to bring people into your tent right now that are not on your side? We know you have the progressives. We know you have that Bernie Sanders movement. But how are you going to bring these people into your tent when you're calling Trump a neo-fascist? If you're not aware of what's going on, and this depth you're talking about that Cornel has compared to Bobby is ridiculous when you can say these statements, especially when it comes to the COVID-19 protocols. Whether we like it or not, it should be equally as important. What happened with COVID and Israel-Palestine should be on the same fucking playing field. But unfortunately, it is not.
And not
Foreign policy is so far down, and people don't even care about Israel-Palestine. That sucks that they don't. But he was just almost oblivious to what was going on. And he also mentioned, Cornel, that he had 3 shots. Well, why'd you stop, buddy? Did you sense something was going on? And if you sense something that what's going on, why don't you go back, do some look and some research and come to the conclusion that, wait a second, this was a DARPA project all along, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This was very, very bad. What we did was wrong. We censored people. And I should apologize for my comment right off the bat saying that people didn't mask up because they didn't love their neighbors. They didn't mask up because they didn't get the debate they wanted. They didn't get the conversation they wanted. And you know something, fam? People who are going to support Cornel West and in his base right now, people like Emma Vigeland, are still out there.
They're not. She's not supporting Cornel.
She's going to do Marianne Williamson?
Yeah.
Okay. But there are people who have the same mindset as Emma, right, that still believe that it was safe and effective, that the mRNA technology was okay. She went on Tim Pool, and Tim Pool, I only saw a clip. I should watch the whole thing. But from what I saw somebody clipped out, she's able to spout these same lies. Like, people are just spouting the same lies that at the very least, this vaccine saved more people than COVID killed. And not talking about anything that has to do with that, which is false anyways. And you're just repeating the industry talking points. So these things are still out there. So my question to Chris Hedges is, how are you going to get people outside of your bubble, outside of your echo chamber, to come into your house and get there? And when you have this type of rhetoric in this talk, it's stupid. And why are you so concentrating on RFK? Wouldn't you want, if Kennedy is never going to win, and he says in the interview, because I listened to the whole interview today, Kennedy's never going to give him the nomination. Never win. Okay. So then don't say anything about him. Let him go after Biden. And when he beats up Biden, then you step on in and then you win. No. Why would you go after the guy who's beating up Biden? Why are we not allowed to
criticize people?
You're allowed to criticize them, but they're fixated on it, fam. They are fixated on criticizing RFK, and they're not even criticizing Biden.
Everybody, their job isn't to compete with Biden. Their job is because we already know why Biden's bad. The point is, they see Kennedy as taking votes away from a potential Green Party run. It's that basic.
But he already admitted in this interview, the whole interview, that they're never going to give it to Kennedy. That he's going to come down to him, Biden, and Trump.
I think he should be, of course. But I mean, he's criticized. We have all criticized Biden for a long time. We know what Biden's faults are. We know he's establishment. We know all of this. I don't think people should get mad. And this has been my issue with the Kennedy contingent. They don't want him criticized at all. I'm sorry. He's going to get the criticisms like any other candidate running. as he gets. Now, regarding Chris Hedges's words, nothing that he said was not true, except his perspective on he thinks Cornel is far more, has far more depth than Kennedy. People would argue otherwise when it comes, depending on the topic. When it comes to COVID, when it comes to foreign policy in terms of NATO and all of that, Kennedy has shown far more depth than Cornel. And that's just the reality. So for him to say that, obviously he's in his campaign, he's going to promote his candidate. I don't think anything that Hedges was pointing out was invalid in terms of the reality. I even mentioned it, that Kennedy comes from a wealthy family, that his family has this, this dynasty type of culture. We're going back, right, from families, Bush, Clinton, Kennedy's, like it's just back and forth. So some people are tired of that, and people definitely with a critical lens from the left are going to have an issue with that, because they really are against that sort of establishment leadership. But when he's focusing on his dad, or when he's focusing on his uncle, it's like, well, why aren't you focused on more of the Zionism, more of the Palestinian things, more of the reasons why I criticized him? Like, I didn't go and say, oh, Kennedy is just a spoiled, rich boy who blah, blah, blah. I understand the concern of that. But it just feels like a cheap shot in terms of his criticism, because it's like you could criticize him for other things, talk about Palestine more and why he's wrong on that, talk about this and that, and say, look, he's good here and he's not good here. It feels like it's very, he's not admitting to what he has done well, what Kennedy has done well, which I have admitted to, right? And like, I agree with him at the very end. Like, I will never support somebody that is pushing Zionism, because to me, that is an extension of U.S. foreign policy. And I believe that in the future, Israel will continue to expand into the Middle East, and they will try to take over as an extension of the military-industrial complex. And I don't think it's it's a minor issue, or it's a whatever issue, like some people see it. They're willing to forego it. I'm not. And it's just that simple. I'm not willing to do it. But he didn't really bring up other points as to why Kennedy, and he didn't bring up other points as in Joe Biden. And he should have said, well, Joe Biden is worse on this and this and that. Like, he didn't. It just seems like an extremely myopic point of view. And then the Whites comment, what he was trying to say was that the people who are in control, the people who have written history, do paint us a picture that isn't valid. But the way he said it, you didn't get that. You just got, he's saying white people are all like painting this false picture. And so a lot of people are going to feel turned off by that. So the point that Paz is making, I think it's an effective point, is how are you going to reach people outside your bubble if you continue to just like bark at them and not expand? And one of the things Kennedy has done well is talk to America in general. And as myopic as I think his stance on Palestine is, he has been able to talk to both sectors of the Democrats and Republicans. And that's something that no other candidate besides Bernie in recent years has been able to do. And then the second time, of course, Bernie was only talking to the left at that point when he ran. But the candidacies are the most dangerous for the establishment generally, because they're not just talking to the left Green Party, they're talking to everybody. And that's what really is the threat. So I do think like his criticisms, Hedges, should be more focused on what the policy differences as to how Kennedy could improve, rather than focused on his family's legacy and all of that.
Seemed like a cheap shot.
Yeah.
It seemed like a tactic that a lot of people were straight up. And listen, I would have denied the comment about this is how the Whites thinks. I know what he's saying. What I'm saying is you can't deny that how it's going to be perceived. And that's the way that you have to concentrate when you're running these campaigns. How are you going to, like, when Kennedy gets kicked to the curb, how are you going to get those people instead to come over to the Green Party and vote for Cornel West instead of going to Donald Trump?
Right.
That is the question. And I haven't
That's not
seen
what
that.
they're doing.
Yeah, they're not. And that's I think that's a fault in the campaign.
Yeah.
Even in areas we knew right off the jump that nobody's better than Cornel West when it comes to foreign policy is in Israel, Palestine. We knew he's the best at it. Even the way he talks about it, I always look out for Jewish security, but but look out for the respect and the love and the lives of the Palestinians. That's what we're talking about. It is an apartheid state. Everything he talks about is great. The area where I thought he had to one up on Kennedy, he's already falling behind. That's Russia, Ukraine, because
Yeah.
in these RBN interviews, he said 20,000 Russians are locked behind bars because they refuse to fight in the war.
Which is
And that was
false.
one stupid source that doesn't have a lot of great
No,
backing behind
it's
it, right?
a U.S. Yeah, it's like
a U.S.
a U.S.
talking point.
backed source.
Yeah.
I believe I forget the name, but it was definitely not a source,
source.
that was
And it's
like,
not true.
valid.
I
No,
called
it's not
Don. I
true.
said, Don, did you hear anything about this? He goes, no, I don't know anything about this. 20,000 people. He goes, I'm sure there might be a few people locked up, but 20,000, that would be a huge story in Russia we'd be talking about. He also said that the economy was falling apart
Yeah,
in Russia. I mean,
another false
and
thing.
that's another falsehood too, as well. And that lends credence to the fact that they're slapping these sanctions on them.
Yeah.
You know, if Medea Benjamin is going to be your foreign policy advisor, you need help. You need somebody else there with you. I like her takes, and I don't see him gaining points right now. And spending some time going RFK, I think, is making him look petty and is actually costing him. Would you also agree with Tucker's analysis that RFK is being attacked even harder than Trump was when he was running? Like, they are coming out of the gate at RFK. Not the Green Party. I'm talking about the establishment, the Democrats. It's like he's a quack. He's this. I mean,
I don't know if
yeah.
harder. It might, because I don't think he's got Trump's popularity yet. So they were, I mean, it was nonstop Trump this, Trump that when Trump came out. I don't agree that it's more. I do think it's different, because with Trump, there were clear, valid issues he had, right? Like in terms of like how you view the world. Like the people who are supporting him have a completely different worldview. With Kennedy, he's appealing to a wider range of people on both sides of the spectrum, and because there's leftists supporting him and there's people on the right supporting him, and I think that poses a danger for the establishment in terms of his candidacy. And again, I think he is. I don't think he's. I think that there is probably some infiltration. I do think like every single facet, any single issue, whether it's COVID, whether it's Black Lives Matter, any single sort of like movement has been infiltrated.
Yeah.
So I don't think Kennedy is going to be free of that. But I do think that in some ways he is getting from both sides of the.
You think he's better on China? Spectrum. I mean, even with Cornel on RBN saying Chinese elites or Chinese oligarchs and stuff, sitting down with them, I was like, and I argued him with what is an empire versus what is a superpower, right? You were right in my ear for that one, because you were the first one who said that. No. China and Russia are not empires; they're superpowers. But an empire is looking to expand their borders. An empire has 800 bases around the globe.
Yeah.
What Cornel said there too as well is like, and he talked about once again that history cycle. Dude, once they invented the computer chip, the way we communicate with each other, once they invented once they split the atom and we have nuclear weapons, a lot of things have done changed. So I don't want to hear what's going on back in the Ming Dynasty and kind of pin them on what's going on there today. I thought that what area is Cornel West gaining more ground in other than Israel and Palestine right now? I don't see it. And I think they need to get the ball rolling. And I hope he listens to me when I fucking talk to him in this interview, because they are behind, and you're not going to reach these people with the rhetoric they're using. And now Chris Hedges with this rhetoric.
If you were running this campaign a few years ago, 8 years ago, you could probably get away with it. Running this campaign post Bernie Sanders, post COVID, post the 2020 election, post everything, Russia, Ukraine, post where we are right now, running the same type of rhetoric that Cornel is doing is really not reaching out enough to a wide range of people to be able to put you on the map, in spite of the recognition he has, in spite of the respect. I mean, look, I like Cornel in spite of everything. I disagree with him. He just seems like a genuine, nice person. But again, that's not necessarily going to make me vote for him, because that's fine. You might be a genuine, nice person, but I'm not going to vote for you if I don't feel like you know what you're talking about when it comes to key issues. And I live in Russia, and everything he said about Russia is completely false. So that to me is like, okay, well, what's left? This is the Green Party. You need more than anything to reach out outside. And the Green Party itself has issues, which we've talked about with our good friend, where, they're very divided on certain issues. And I think the Green Party would do well to listen to the Black Caucus of the Green Party and what their concerns have been, because you'd be surprised how concerned they are when it comes to the surveillance state, when it comes to the COVID policies, when it comes to a whole heap of things. And, and COVID, by the way, just how it is an important issue to many, it's also not an important issue to a lot of people. A lot of people, especially on the left, have been just like, well, we're against mandates, but, we're not really going to do the research on the COVID stuff, whatever. And especially outside of the United States, it wasn't really in Latin America. It wasn't something that they dealt
They
with
had better,
the same way.
bigger priorities.
Yeah, well, they have other priorities, but they also didn't. It was a different type of vaccine. They didn't deal with it the same way we dealt with it. And places like Mexico, they didn't really shut down. And places here, we obviously did. And so that created a different type of perspective. So the COVID issue is going to be completely different depending on where you are and who you are. But I think for a lot of people here in the United States, it was a huge issue. And if you're weak on that issue, and it's such a huge issue that really crossed barriers when it came to the left-right paradigm, then you're going to be weak in general. If not, and he says he's willing to learn, but really we have to see that in his campaign. Like if he's going to run that campaign that way, who like Chris Hedges doing this is really just alienating a lot of people.
It's not helping.
And
Well, listen, Cornel is better than Marianne Williamson on China, right? He's better than Donald Trump. China did it. It was China's fault. The virus is here. China. He's not better than RFK on China. I think RFK has showed that he's better on China. And the question I plan to ask RFK, I had a death in the family. I was going to go up and be part of the press conference in the speech in New Hampshire, and I had 2 questions for him. And usually I have a kind of like a set kind of way of doing things. I'm going to go after really hard criticism. That's going to be your first question. Your second question, I'm going to elaborate on something I think that you might have better ideas for, and you're in a decent area. And one of the questions I plan to ask him too was about Israel, right? About what we had talked about. And this is something that you pointed out too as well, because we had done a lot of work on the COVID-19. Some of the worst data came out of Israel. They were chabbed up. So I was going to ask him, what is your stance on how do you think about Netanyahu pretty much claiming that he used Israel as a petri dish and then also sharing health data across the board? And we know from looking at Israeli data, some of the worst data coming out of this vaccine that you've been so critical against. What are your thoughts there? Right? But I also was going to ask him, the other question was going to be, can you clarify where you think this virus came from? Donald Trump yells, China, China, China. It was said to maybe come out of the Wuhan lab. What are your thoughts on that? And allow him to explain how it is American money. It's Western backed. This is a bioweapon from our house, inside of our house. And I know that's what he's going to say, and I'm going to make sure that he clarifies it. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll say that the Chinese invested in it, like Naomi Wolf. We don't know. We'll have to see. So RFK, I think, is better on than those people on China. I know he's definitely not better than on China fam. Guess who? Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, antiwar.com. Let's go to our boy over here. Kyle Anzalone is one of our friends. He's been on the show. So has Dave DeCamp. Cheese Slice, let's bring this article right over here. This is from antiwar.com. Representative Gaetz, fam, wants to give Biden military authorization to take out the Chinese assets in Cuba. So anti-war Matt Gaetz, fam, right? He's anti-war, but he wants him to use the AUMF to go after China in Cuba. Matt Gaetz, represented Florida on Thursday, told the House Armed Services Committee that he wants to give President Biden the authority to intervene militarily in Cuba to take out, those are in air quotes, Chinese assets that are allegedly on the island. First of all, it's a bullshit story. There's no Chinese base that's going into Cuba. The Chinese are coming in with the BRICS nations to help them financially and economically, but there is no freaking Chinese aircraft destroyer.
And I'm glad the Chinese are doing that, because Cuba is in dire need, and both Russia and China are making economic deals with Cuba, and this is going to help out. Starting July 1st, there's going to be more flights directly from Russia into Cuba, which will be great for both the Russians and the Cubans, because the Russians can only go certain places. They can only go to Turkey without needing a visa. They can go to like certain Arab countries without needing a visa, but they want to see the beach because they live in Russia.
Yeah.
So what do? Okay, so now you can go to Cuba and spend your money, and you can use your MIR card, put it in there, and your rubles will come out in pesos, and you'll be able to have the cash. It works well for both economies, and I think China's just going to be doing that as well. More infrastructure projects. So it is really good. We should all be happy. We should be happy that Cuba is developing. We should be happy that other countries are helping it. Instead, this is my issue with the United States' foreign policy. We want to destroy and crush Cuba, and and I believe these people have an ideological desire to do it. I don't think it's even economics, because economics wise, we could benefit from a good relationship with Cuba as Cuba could with us.
Yeah.
But it's not economics. I think from these people like Gates, it's ideological, because they describe themselves as a socialist country. They want to crush that.
And Cuba has already announced that they are going to open up their private markets from 222 to like 2,000. They're going to go with that Chinese model. Russia's coming in. You know, he went to Vladimir. He talked to him. This is a guy who's the new leader. He's not Castro. He didn't put missiles on the island, but yet these people still want to destroy them. And this shows you that you're not anti-war when you are okay with the authorization use of the AUMF, the authorization use of military force. If you're for that against the board in any situation, even if you think it's a good situation, you're not anti-war, because it can always be taken and used in the wrong way. I support an authorization for use of military force to take out the Chinese assets in Cuba, Gates said. He wanted to add the AUMF to an amendment to the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, but had to withdraw it for procedural reasons. To my hawk friends on the committee who think I am too much of a dove, right? This amendment is an authorization to use military force given to President Biden to take out the Chinese assets in Cuba, he said, like he's winking to his people. See, I'm tough, rough, and tough, fam. You say I'm a dove and I'm too nice? Let's go blow up Cuba. Gates' comments came after the Wall Street Journal reported Beijing and Havana are negotiating to establish a joint military training facility in Cuba, which cited unnamed U.S. officials who based the claim on convincing but fragmentary intelligence. So it's not even fucking true. U.S. officials have also reclaimed that China has had spying capabilities in Cuba since at least 2019. Bullshit. Which Beijing has denied. But if the claims are true and Beijing is looking to build military assets and spying facilities in Cuba, it will be a response to the U.S. building up militarily in areas near China, particularly Taiwan, which is about as far from mainland China as Cuba is from Florida.
Right.
So, fam, they're trying to use an excuse to say we can do this over here because they're doing this. We can do this over there because they're doing that over here. It is ridiculous. And the shame about this whole situation is that really the Cubans that were born here, the sons and daughters of the Cubans that had to flee the island for whatever reason, they had nothing to do with the whole situation. Why shouldn't they be able to go invest in a new Cuba moving forward? Why are they going to be shut out? Because of our stupid fucking global fascist mentality? See, you say it's an ideological thing, but I also think there could be other economic sources behind it pushing these guys going, make sure you stay on top of Cuba because we want our real estate back. The mafia, right. I just want to point that out because the mafia owned all the casinos and whatnot, but people don't talk about it. It's 80% of the industrialization companies in Cuba were owned by Western corporations too, and they want it back, fam. Their families want it back. The kids of those families want it back. They want it back, and we are missing out.
Who wants it? Who wants our money back?
Fam, don't talk.
What is she your comrade?
No, she's not my comrade. But listen. One of the terms I told Dr. Cornel West, I said, Dr. West, I was being really harsh to the people that I disagree with, and I was calling them gusanos. It's a term that Fidel Castro used for the people who were imperialist friendly to American forces. I'm not using it anymore because I want to be able to talk to these people, so I've removed it. Fam, you can still use it because I know you care.
Oh, I'm not stopping using it. You're a gusano. Yeah.
Oh God.
So American exceptionalist foreign policy right there. The United States can decide that China is doing something in spite of China saying, and they can just invade another foreign country in spite of that. So sure. Yeah.
That's why when Kennedy says we have 800 bases, they got 1.5. That's big. And that's what I mean, there are some good things there, but I hear you loud and clear. Fam, that's it for today. Unless you want to talk about something else.
No, that's it, right? That was
short show today. I know I'm saying that's it. I think we have something at the bottom of the dock there, cheese slice. Guys, make sure if you didn't have a chance, go over to the Rockfin. Let me take a look at Rockfin real quick.
Really quickly, I do want to lay something out. So there's something weird going on right now. People are trying to figure out what is happening. So Yevgeny Prigozhin, the let me pull this up here because
put it here?
No, I didn't put it in there. I'm just gonna let you guys know what's been going on with that because it's kind of weird. because so the Russian Ministry of Defense has accused the Wagner chief, Yevgeny Prigozhin, of spreading misinformation. Like this is so Yevgeny Prigozhin went out and he was putting out these claims on Telegram saying really negative things about Russia. And so he said that he reposted a video on Telegram, and it's supposed to show the result of a missile strike by the Russian armed forces on the rear camp of the Wagner PMC. But the footage doesn't say anything. There's no corpse or human body in the video. And this is Donbass Shabushka posted this video. And it's just fires, right? And so everybody was waiting for the Russian Ministry of Defense to come in. And so then the Russian Ministry of Defense responded and said that what Yevgeny Prigozhin was putting was or anybody who was putting this on behalf of Yevgeny Prigozhin, saying this alleged strike by the Russian Ministry of Defense on the rear camps of the PMC, Wagner, do not correspond to the reality and are an informational provocation. So this is the first time Yevgeny Prigozhin has had it off or some sort of confrontation with the Russian Ministry of Defense. Remember when he made those videos talking about not having enough men, not having enough capabilities, but then right after that, what happened? Russia had a really successful offensive, and they patched it up and it was fine. So people are wondering if this is real or if this a manufactured distraction, perhaps, to allow Russia to continue moving in the offensive. I have a hard time thinking it's a manufactured distraction if the Russian Ministry of Defense is saying he's spreading misinformation, though. Because if it, you know, like that, now it's like it seems like there is an actual conflict. So this entire thing is just very, very, very bizarre, in my opinion. So yeah,
I got some super rays, but guess who just came in here? Come here, Mom. You want to say hi to fam?
Hi.
You see, Mom is here. His fam.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
You look so
sound
nice.
great. Thank you. And so
show your
knowledgeable.
nails.
And stop. And your audience, I'm sure, agrees with you, understands you, and loves you.
Thank
and
you.
that's not YouTube.
Mom, you're supposed to be bragging about my
See
mom.
you guys together.
Yeah.
Again.
Aw.
My-
It really is.
My mom and I had to leave unfortunately for a funeral, and my mom was asked to do the eulogy and hadn't seen my cousin in quite some time. But she did an amazing job and she nailed it, and they haven't stopped talking about it. And it was one of those moments, even though it was a sad situation, I was very proud of my mother for doing something because she gave such a touching speech and laid it out beautifully. And I think she got that because she watches the Combo Couch, right, Mom?
Without a doubt, all the inspiration I get from you guys.
Thank you.
Young, knowledgeable. You're right. You are boots on the ground.
Oh, give me a kiss,
You
Mama.
are.
I love you.
That means goodbye. Bye, everybody.
It's like that.
Bye.
We're finished up right now. We'll be out in 2 seconds. So get some spritzes ready, Mom.
You got it.
Some spritzes. All right, so take a look. We do have some Super A contributions real quick. Gregory Walker tipped $2. So we got Green Obama. Ooh, RFK.
All right.
RF Con. Oh, God, Greg. Remind me who is in the top 3 of the Libertarian Party pasta. Call me Gregory Walker. I'll tell you who number 3 is. Number 1, David Smith. Number 2 is Judge Napolitano. Number 3, you'll have to find out. Call me. Gregory Walker also said, we need to take Viagra and vote harder for the lesser of two evils. A psychopath is worse than a sociopath. One who will kill you. The other one will kill you and blank off on your corpse. Come on, Gregory Walker. What is wrong with you? And also, T-Can tipped. The Combo Couch received a tip, $2. $2 truck. Guys, go to our Rockfin if you can. Sign up for our premium Rockfin. It's $14.99 a month. It does help us out. We do have a Patreon, of course, as well. That can always help us out. And you can always send us money directly. You know, all the links are in the description over there. So, fam, you want to let everybody know where you be, what you got going on, what's on the dock? I'm wearing your free Alex Saab hat, so you know.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen, I'm gonna share it on Twitter. Me and Terry did a deep dive into Alex Saab. what happened at the forum. It's another important case of lawfare, this time with a diplomat instead of a journalist like Julian Assange. But I did bring Julian Assange into the speech that I made because I thought it was important. And I had to make that speech in Spanish, so I had to write that one out because I never write out my speeches, but that one, since it was in Spanish, it's been a little bit, I've been learning Russian. And I didn't want a Russian word to come out instead of a Spanish word or all of that.
Word.
So, or,
Yeah.
so yeah. So, yeah, you guys should check that out to learn more about the case. And we talked a lot about what's happening and, you know, U.S. foreign policy and all of that, and how he shouldn't have been arrested because he is a diplomat. And Venezuela, which you need to go to, you will go to next year when they have their elections, is a very beautiful country, but it's still struggling from the sanctions and the blockade. And although things are better than there were in other times, it is still a struggling country, and you really get to hear why people were struggling because of all of that. And it's not just like the blockade, but also the fact that other people are making money from the sanctions and blockade, stealing their resources. And that's why precisely Waisab, who was taken away for giving medicine and food, not just food, but medicine as well, is looked at as a political prisoner. And this is one of many cases where the United States is doing this. And so it's really bad. And I think more people should know about this case, just like they know more about Julian. Now, today, years later, Julian's name is being, you know, really making a lot of sound finally in mainstream media. And hopefully, you know, he's also freed. So that's why I got him the Free Alex Saab cap, so he can spread awareness about that.
So, fam, I don't know if you know, we're getting out of here, but that sub was found. Pieces were around the bottom. So those billionaires or millionaires, I think mostly billionaires, unfortunately did not make it back. But we did get a comment from somebody. They questioned somebody. Here's the news. Take a look, fam. This is what's her name? White Gladys, I believe. Go ahead, Cheese Slice. You can throw it on up. We don't know shit about that missing submarine. Is right. Too soon? Ouch. That's it for today, guys. We'll be back on Monday. Don DeBar will be with us. He'll be talking. He went and covered the Kennedy situation, and he's also got a nice trip coming up. He'll talk to us about that. We love Don DeBar. He does the show on KPFK. He is a Marxist. He's pretty awesome, and he's a good friend of the show. So we'll see you back Monday for Papa Ardula.
Fiorella.
Cheese Slice on the ones and twos.
Combo out. Thanks for watching.
See you soon.